Well, it's going to be a mixture this time.
Okay,
We're
well,
starting with Against Atheism says, name a single argument for atheism. Divine hiddenness.
divine hiddenness.
The argument from divine hiddenness, technically.
The argument from the problem of evil is technically not an argument for atheism. It's just a defeater for an all-good God. So that's not really a thing for atheism.
I mean, you can do that with any argument for atheism.
Yeah,
But the problem is that all of the gods that people believe in now, well, for the most part, like of the major religions, the gods are supposed to be personal interventionist and mostly benevolent.
depends on the one, because like you sometimes get like Odin, who might introduce.
I was thinking of Hinduism, which is I think their third largest religion right now. Mm-hmm. And they have a whole pantheon of gods, some of whom are good, some of whom aren't. So they don't really have a problem of evil. It's like, why does God not stop all the evil? Well, because there's not one God. There's a bunch of them, and the good gods can't stop all the bad gods all the time.
And like even when you have good gods in certain other religions, the reason that you have bad things happen is because that god is either trying to shape you, or it's some other god who's angry that you're following that god, and therefore you overcoming that thing is both a spite towards the god you don't like and something that's good for the god that you do like. Like there's a lot of stuff there. But my main thing with this would be that if we are to take atheism to just be like the negative position on God, then I don't have to name an argument for atheism. I don't. Because I don't have to give you a reason why I don't believe in something.
Yeah, there's no obvious evidence for God, yet that's not an argument.
Yeah,
This is very Cameron Bertuzzi pilled.
Yeah, I can recognize that most of the arguments for atheism are not arguments for atheism, they're just defeaters for certain types of gods. But I don't, like I said, I would also just say that if we're to take atheism as just the negative position on belief on God, I don't have to substantiate that. I never have to, because it's not a claim.
Well, it's more about whether or not you care about convincing the other person. Because too many people, like atheists and religious people, get the whole burden of proof thing. And it's like, oh, well, the burden of proof works the way that it does in formal debates. It's like, not out here in the real world, it doesn't. The person who has the burden of proof out here in the real world is the person who actually cares about convincing the other person.
Right.
It's like, I don't care if you stay a Christian, but when you say that there's a God out there, I don't believe you.
Yeah, generally speaking,
I don't have the burden of proof because I don't care whether or not you.
Well, and generally speaking, like even for my channel, I don't care that somebody believes in God. I care two things. One, that you've at least thought through your belief a little bit, because that's indicative of how you operate with all of your beliefs. If you didn't put a whole lot of thought into, the big question, then I assume that you didn't put a lot of thought into any of the other little questions in your life. And that stacks up to a person who's just like impulsive and stupid. The other thing is I only really care about convincing somebody not to do harm. And if we're talking about like specifically the Christian God, because like Abrahamic Christian faith is the big one in the United States and Canada too. Like that's the big one here, which is why we typically argue against that. Because what was the fucking thing for a few years was like, why don't you argue against Islam? Because we don't fucking have it here in the same amount. Sorry. It's not the thing that is changing legislation over in fucking Kansas, but Christianity is. I want to convince that person to not use the argument that their God cares about a thing to rip away women's rights. Whether that's making them an atheist or whether that's taking that person and just shifting their perspective on what their God believes. Yeah, whether it's shifting their belief in what their God might want, whether it's changing their morality, or whether it's stripping away their God belief, whatever method leads to them ceasing the harm that they are doing, that is where I am at. Because, like, for every die-hard, shitty Christian, you can also find a die-hard, shitty atheist per capita. I have to say per capita because there are fewer atheists than there are Christians. So
it's defeated by per capita again.
Because, I don't want somebody who has a bunch of shitty beliefs to just become the next atheism is unstoppable. Where they're like, yes, I'm an atheist, but I also don't believe that the black man that got shot was jogging. Like, I don't want you to turn into that.
Hey, atheism is unstoppable was ahead of his time, okay? As far as wokeness goes.
Okay.
He canceled Lawrence Krauss way before any of the rest of us did. I don't know if you remember that. I don't remember why. It was some stupid thing. Like, this is actually because like I've told you all back in the 2016 and before era, I was a bit on the right wing. And I did watch AIU quite a bit. That was the thing that got me to stop watching him, because like he was just so self-important about it. So like it wasn't just like, I don't like this thing that Lawrence Krauss did, so I'm taking him out of my banner. It was like he put out a whole video, did a whole production where he like animated Lawrence Krauss like slowly dropping out of the banner as he explained why, and he made it sound like this was going to be a devastating blow to Lawrence's ego, and I'm just like, but
barely anybody knows about the stupid kangaroo man anymore.
Yeah, like I forget how many subscribers he had, but it wasn't a hell of a lot. So I'm like, I would be very surprised if Lawrence Krauss is even aware of your existence, and you think he's going to be upset that you're taking him out of your little banner thing?
Yeah.
Like, but still, he
Okay, what the fuck? No, stupid. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The person that invented autoplay should have been garroted with piano wire. No. Autoplay is stupid. The fact that I am uploading a video on Patreon doesn't mean that I want it to immediately play. I know what the fuck I shot. Stop.
That's Firefox has an advantage there.
Well, I'm working on mobile right now, so.
Okay. Well, uploading videos through mobile? What the fuck is wrong with you? Firefox just kiboshes autoplay by default. There's probably is a way to turn it on, but like, one of the things in Chrome-based browsers is like if you open a bunch of YouTube videos that you want to like you see a bunch on your homepage that you're all interested in, so you open them in new tabs with the intention of going through them. If you click on the wrong one, it just automatically starts playing.
Yeah,
I hate it. Firefox doesn't do that.
Sean says, I mean, laptops have more space than your phone. Right, but so the thing is, when I'm doing my Patreon videos are almost always vlogs. So it's usually shot on my phone when I would be shooting a vlog. So just like I'm in the car talking about everything going on the channel. The data's on my phone, so it's just easiest to upload it from the phone. And once it's there, clicking on the Patreon app and throwing the thing on the app is also the easiest next step to do.
Yeah, I just hate doing anything on the phone, so I wouldn't even record. So Sacker would like me to remind everybody that Lawrence Krauss and Dawkins are both in the Epstein files for complaining about Rebecca Watson, which I'm pretty sure Rebecca Watson was the elevator gate person.
I think so.
Where like, if you're not familiar with elevator gate, you're so lucky. But that was a thing where like Rebecca Watson was at a conference and she gave a talk on respecting women. And as an example, she brought up like, I was giving a similar talk at a different conference, and a guy approached me in an elevator, and like specifically my talk was on like not doing things like what this guy did, and he like came up and was like, "Oh, I loved your talk. Would you like to come back to my room for coffee?" And like in a enclosed trap space or whatever, and yeah, he approached her in the elevator. It made her uncomfortable. She talked about it. She did not name him. She did not say, see, all men are terrible because this is the kind of thing that they do. She just used that as an example of how like men a lot of times are just completely blind to, like, they will hear the words that they're saying, but not listen. So like at the talk about not being sexist and making women feel comfortable, that's not the time to proposition someone in an enclosed space.
Yep.
And then Dawkins, like, it was a complete nothing burger. She was just like, hey, that's an example of a thing not to do. Didn't call him out, didn't call for him to be canceled or whatever. And Dawkins freaked out and wrote a tweet where he was like pretending to talk to a Muslim woman in the Middle East, being like, oh yeah, you know, you are in a culture that doesn't treat you as a human being, but this person was offered coffee. And like,
the fact that you don't,
it's like, fuck off, Dawkins.
The fact that you can't understand what it means is evidence of your position in that conversation. If you can't fathom why being propositioned for anything in the middle of something like that, when there is an expectation that you are worried about, if you can't see why that would make somebody uncomfortable, then I want to be the person that says I don't need to explain why that's something that you should understand. But at the same time, obviously it needs to be explained.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole point of his post was essentially like, there are people in the world that have it worse than you, so stop complaining. But like, that is true of literally everything that you could possibly complain about.
Yeah, I don't need to hear life advice from actually eugenics would work really Dawkins.
But I can read the Dear Muslima letter if you want.
Sure, why not?
Dear Muslima, stop whining, will you? Yes, I know you had your genitals mutilated with a razor blade, and yawn, don't tell me yet again, I know you aren't allowed to drive a car, and you can't leave the house without a male relative, and your husband is allowed to beat you, and you'll be stoned to death if you commit adultery, but stop whining, will you? Think of the suffering of your poor American sisters, have to put up with. Only this week I heard of one. She calls herself Skepchick, and do you know what happened to her? A man in a hotel elevator invited her back to his room for coffee. I'm not exaggerating, he really did. He invited her back to his room for coffee. Of course, she said no, and of course he didn't lay a finger on her, but even so. And you, Muslima, think you have misogyny to complain about? For goodness sake, grow up, or at least grow a thicker skin.
I also think there's an aspect to this that's frustrating, because people don't seem to realize, or at least back then didn't seem to realize, that things like this have layers. You can have a type of misogyny where it feels like it's completely not a problem at all for you. But then if you look about it for even a second on the other side of that conversation, okay, this person's just propositioning me for coffee, but they want me to go into a enclosed space away from anybody else. Why would I do that? I don't know if I feel safe doing that. If you can't think of that, if you can't understand that, that's just a little fucking frustrating. But again, the fact that somebody has something worse, the fact that somebody has a situation that is worse than your current situation right now, is not and has never been a good defeater for whether or not a problem is bad or exists. I stubbed my toe. Well, people have cancer. Okay.
Yeah, but my toe still hurts.
It's like, you didn't stop my toe from hurting, so we still have an issue.
I mean, I will admit that I have fallen into this occasionally with the kids. I mean, like, oh, you don't like the food that's in front of you? Well, you know what? There's starving people in Africa that would be happy to eat it.
Right, but the food being in front of you, but the food being in front of you isn't a slight or a problem. There is a benefit in front of you, and your worry is that the benefit was not the flavor of benefit that you wanted, versus a stubbed toe where there's no benefit at all. There is just suffering. There's just a form of suffering.
No, God works to bring everything together for good. So your stubbed toe had a purpose. You will be a better person for having stubbed your toe.
I appreciate that perspective. No. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.